I found myself standing there, tears streaming down my face, as I witnessed a confrontation that seemed straight out of a movie. There, in the middle of it all, was my husband. He was in a heated scuffle with another man, Steve, while a few of Steve's friends stood by, their expressions a mix of disbelief and shock. And the heart-wrenching part, I couldn't shake off the feeling that, in some way, this chaos was on me. Though, if I'm being honest, I believe a series of unfortunate events played a bigger role. Let's rewind a bit. I tied the knot with Dave a decade ago, at the ripe age of 23. After quitting college, I found myself waiting tables, which is how I met Dave. He was charming, easy on the eyes, and we had mutual acquaintances. We started dating, and before I knew it, I couldn't picture my life without him. Thankfully, he felt the same, and after a year of cohabitation, we made it official. Like any typical young couple, we had our life set up: a home, 2 wonderful kids, 3 cars, and a decent savings account. That is until an unprecedented storm hit and upended everything. This storm was unlike anything Michigan had seen. We're used to minor twisters causing localized damage, but nothing like the disaster that struck last year. I remember that day vividly. I had gotten up early to prepare breakfast for the kids before school. Dave wasn't around as he was on a business trip, which had left me more than a little upset. That trip sparked a deep reflection within me about my own identity, or the lack thereof. I realized I had lost myself to the roles I played for others, Dave's wife, Kyle, and Wendy's mom, but never just Lisa. It felt like I hadn't done anything solely for myself in ages. Sure, I met with friends occasionally, but those interactions only highlighted how insignificant I felt. Most of my friends were single, career-focused, and their lives seemed so much more vibrant compared to mine. Reflecting on my past, before meeting Dave, I lived quite freely, but now, a decade later, it seemed like my old college friends had surpassed me in their adventures. Comparing my life to theirs, mine felt unremarkable. Despite my deep love for my family, there were moments I wished things had happened differently, perhaps meeting Dave later in life or waiting longer before starting our family. I get it, some might think that with the kids at school, I could easily join the workforce. But here's the thing, I've tried, and it's not that simple. Back in my school days, let's just say I wasn't the model student. I didn't take my education seriously, ended up dropping out of college, and found myself working as a waitress. A few years back, I decided to give education another shot, enrolling in some courses at the local community college. Dave, ever the supportive partner, was all in. He bought me a laptop, assisted with my assignments, you name it. But, alas, the issue was me. My attention span was virtually non-existent, even for the most basic classes meant to get me up to speed. They started me with the essentials: literature, creative writing, and math. These subjects were supposed to lay the groundwork for more complex studies down the line. But even these introductory courses felt like a mountain I couldn't climb. Sitting in a classroom, trying to engage with material that felt so distant from anything I enjoyed or found useful, was a struggle. Poetry and Shakespeare didn't resonate with me. The intricacies of grammar and punctuation seemed outdated. Math, let's not even go there. I've always been hopeless with numbers. Dave tried to help, spending hours tutoring me after his own long days at work. But despite his patience, I couldn't grasp the concepts. When exam time rolled around, I was unprepared and unsurprisingly didn't do well. It was clear that the traditional academic path wasn't for me. Realizing that returning to waitressing wasn't appealing either, I sought excitement elsewhere, looking to invigorate my life and relationship with Dave. We explored new dimensions in our intimacy, which brought us closer in many ways. However, when I suggested trying out more adventurous experiences together, Dave was not on board. It was one of the few things he firmly declined, marking a rare boundary in our otherwise open and accommodating relationship. Dave is an incredible person, always going out of his way for our family's happiness and well-being. The fact that he drew the line made me rethink my approach, acknowledging the strength and limits of our bond. So, I figured it was time to gently nudge him out of his firm stance. I casually mentioned the idea of us inviting one of my charming single friends to join us for an evening. I thought he'd jump at the chance. Doesn't the fantasy of more attention appeal to everyone? But my husband, Dave, was not interested. Not in the slightest. That put an end to my musings in that area. And to make matters more complicated, Dave began to give me these curious glances. I should mention, our intimacy was never lacking. Dave was exceptional, truly the best I've ever known. But, you know, sometimes when life gives you a routine, even if it's luxurious, you start craving a little variety. When I shared this episode with my friends over lunch, they too were let down. Little did I know, they had secretly hoped to be the friend I invited. For the next few weeks, Dave observed me more closely than usual. It wasn't until I stumbled upon his computer history that I understood why. He had been diving into stories online by authors like C. Pete, Saxon Hart, and others, all revolving around themes of betrayal. At first, I was puzzled, but then it clicked. They were all tales of infidelity. Realizing this, I noticed a recurring theme: few stories ended happily for the unfaithful. This notion of forgiveness was rare, and the outcomes were often grim. When Dave returned home that evening, I immediately addressed his concerns. "Dave, I've never thought of being with anyone else," I assured him. His sigh of relief was palpable, and for the first time since my awkward suggestion, we embraced warmly. "Lisa," he confessed, "I love you too much to share you with anyone else. I want us to be exclusive, forever." After he went upstairs, I felt a surprising sense of relief, yet couldn't pinpoint why. Despite this, a part of me still felt unfulfilled, as if I was missing out on the broader experiences life had to offer. This longing took me back to my carefree days in college, a stark contrast to the mood I was in when the storm arrived. Speaking of storms, my kids are exceptionally bright, attending a prestigious school for gifted children established by a visionary from the Clinton era, Charles Xavier. This school is reputed to be the best around, though I've always been skeptical about the hype. The most remarkable thing about the kids there seems to be their parents' ability to afford such an education. Living in the suburbs, a fair distance from the bustling downtown near the riverfront, meant my kids had a lengthy 40-minute bus ride to school each morning. Though I offered to drive them, they preferred the bus, cherishing the camaraderie with their friends. With the arrival of spring, the landscape brightened, grass turned lusher, and the days stretched longer, peppered with frequent rains and occasional thunderstorms. Inspired by the seasonal change, I decided to explore the newly inaugurated farmers market by the river, anticipating a haul of fresh, reasonably priced fruits and vegetables. However, my experience veered unexpectedly. I encountered a group of affluent individuals who had swapped city life for farming, claiming a dedication to cultivating purely organic produce, untouched by pesticides, promising a healthier choice for my family. Their passionate narratives about their nurtured produce were compelling. I was nearly convinced, especially by their tales of individually named and cherished fruits. Yet, the reality struck when I learned the price, $5 for a single apple, attributed to their sentimental value, which drastically limited my purchase. Moreover, I soon discovered that the absence of preservatives in organic fruits meant they spoiled much quicker than expected, rendering my pricey apples inedible overnight. Subsequent research debunked the perceived health benefits of organic produce over traditionally grown fruits. As I was contemplating the economics of organic strawberries, the sky darkened ominously. The farmers hastily packed their goods and children, prioritizing their departure. I too decided it was best to head home, skipping a planned visit to the kids' school. Barely had I settled into my SUV when the wind escalated, tossing debris around. I felt fortunate for my timely departure. Navigating home in my robust vehicle, I appreciated its stability amidst the storm's fury, even as I maneuvered through torrential rain and navigated past emergency vehicles, a testament to the storm's severity. I switched on the radio, hoping to catch updates on the storm brewing outside. What I heard next was far from reassuring. Attention to residents in Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb counties. The current weather conditions may lead to the formation of a funnel cloud. We urge everyone to find a safe place immediately. Fantastic, I mumbled to myself, thinking about the outdoor furniture I had just set up. Getting home quickly became my top priority. No sooner had I covered a mile, the rising water on the streets became noticeable. A grin crossed my face, thankful for my truck's high clearance, a stark contrast to those in lower sports cars struggling to find passable roads as the water swiftly rose. Attempting to join the freeway, I was met with a standstill. Traffic was bumper to bumper, not moving an inch. A police officer on a motorcycle passed by, his siren cutting through the chaos. He instructed us to leave the ramp immediately as the freeway was being shut down due to the flood. Reversing my truck, concern began to set in. The detour through the city streets meant a longer journey home, and the thought of my lawn furniture being damaged or lost to the storm loomed over me. Navigating the city at a snail's pace, the situation seemed to deteriorate with each passing moment. The wind's roar was audible even through closed windows, and my SUV felt like it was moments from being swept away by the gusts. Obstacles were frequent, fallen trees blocked roads, forcing detours and adding to the tension. The radio broadcaster, rather than offering solace, seemed to amplify the dread with apocalyptic updates. A thunderclap, so deafening I thought my head might split, was followed by a lightning strike on a nearby power pole, leaving live wires dangerously exposed. Trapped, with no clear path forward or back, I cracked open the window only for the rain to drench me instantly. Peering behind, the sight of sparking wires was alarming. Exiting my truck, a scream pierced the air. "Move, lady," someone yelled, just as I heard a tree crack. Running on instinct, I dashed away, the sound of the tree crashing down where my truck stood a stark reminder of the narrow escape from what could have been a fatal outcome. If I had paused, this tale might have been told in memoriam rather than as a recount of my harrowing experience. The wind was howling so fiercely that maintaining my balance was a challenge, and my attire was utterly drenched. Amid the chaos, I heard a faint voice calling, "Over here, miss." Turning towards the sound, I spotted a somewhat familiar figure sheltering in the entrance of a dilapidated building. Despite its worn appearance, its solid metal door and concrete structure seemed promising. Battling the relentless wind, I made my way towards the refuge as quickly as I could. Approaching the building, another tree succumbed to the storm's fury, falling near the mangled remains of what was once my truck. The stranger quickly pulled me inside, where, to my relief, it was dry. The place was an outdoor storage unit belonging to a construction and landscaping firm, now a makeshift shelter for 4 other men besides my rescuer. Among them was a young man in his early 20s and another who appeared to be in his 60s. They were all engaged in a conversation about the severity of the storm, listening to a small radio for disaster and weather updates. The storm had already spawned several tornadoes, and the National Weather Service had issued advisories to remain indoors for the next few hours. As this information sank in, a large object propelled by the wind struck the building, plunging us into darkness. 2 dim emergency lights flickered on, indicating the loss of main power, as my companion observed. "You really don't recognize me, do you, Mrs. Thomas?" he inquired, with a knowing smile. I could only shake my head in confusion. "That's probably for the best," he continued, his smile widening. Puzzled, I asked, "Why would that be a good thing?" Pretending to conjure information from thin air, he revealed, "Your name is Lisa Thomas. You have 2 kids, a boy and a girl. Your son, Kyle, dreams of being a baseball star, and your daughter, Wendy, attends Xavier's school." His knowledge about my life unsettled me. "How do you know all this?" I demanded, on edge. "Your daughter, Wendy, is friends with my twin daughters, Melinda and Belinda. She's been to our house several times," he explained, still smiling. Recognition dawned on me then, and a sense of familiarity replaced my initial wariness. "But why did you say it was better I didn't remember you?" I inquired, curious about his earlier remark. "Because I'm rarely home," he started. "You wouldn't see me when you drop off or pick up your daughter. The last time we saw each other was at the PTA meeting about the school day extension. You were in favor, I was against it. It led to us having a heated debate in front of everyone, and they had to calm us down. Afterwards, you called me insufferable, and I retorted harshly. I couldn't help but laugh. And yet you helped me." I questioned. "We might disagree on some things, but deep down, we're similar," he explained. "We both want what's best for our children, to make life better for them." "That's true," I acknowledged, giving him a reconsidering look. "Steve," he introduced himself, offering his hand. Just as we shook hands, a loud crash sounded as something heavy struck the building. "Wow, there was a car," someone exclaimed. "Quick, shut and lock the door," another person urged. "The wind's too strong, and something feels off." "Block the door with whatever you can, in case the locks give out," someone else suggested. All the men sprang into action, securing the door with anything heavy they could find. As we finished, the window shattered. Hastily, we blocked it with a cabinet. Never had I been so terrified. "We'll get through this," Steve reassured me. "The tough part will be dealing with your insurance for your vehicle." "I'm genuinely scared," I admitted. It's curious about men, even when terrified, they often hide it. Some of them were now playing cards by the emergency light, seemingly unfazed by the chaos outside. "It's going to be all right," Steve comforted, pulling me into a hug. Just as I began to express my gratitude, another impact shook the building, this time cracking the concrete at the back, revealing a sliver of light where there was none before. I panicked, clinging to Steve as if he were my lifeline. The tempest outside grew fiercer by the moment. "We're not going to make it," I exclaimed. "We'll be okay," Steve reassured, his calm voice a stark contrast to my alarm. While he had already let go, I found myself unable to release him, holding on as if my life depended on it. The others in the room seemed oblivious to our plight. Steve guided us to a secluded corner, seeking a semblance of privacy. "Focus on something else," he suggested, trying to distract me. Another violent shake threatened the building, prompting me to press even closer. My fear intensified, pushing any other considerations aside. Steve attempted to create some distance, but my grip was unyielding. Lisa," he stammered, clearly uncomfortable. "I don't care," I whispered urgently. "Just don't leave me. I'm terrified." He enveloped me in his arms again as another tremor struck, this time even closer. The card players spared us a fleeting glance before returning to their game, unaware of the tension between us. In that moment of fear and desperation, boundaries blurred. Steve tried to comfort me, his intentions mixed with human frailty. He whispered reassurances, "It's just a storm," trying to calm both of us, though his actions belied his words. I realized then, amidst the chaos, that I should have stepped back, prioritized rationality over my fear. But the storm outside mirrored the turmoil within me, drowning out reason. Steve maintained his hold, offering what comfort he could, his actions a misguided attempt to protect and soothe. "Nobody needs to know," I reassured myself, caught between fear and a desire for solace in the storm. As the tempest raged on, Steve and I found ourselves in a complex dance of fear, comfort, and human connection, each trying to find a way to weather the storm together, our actions a mix of compassion and desperation in the face of nature's fury. His expression hardened then, as if my reluctance to share a kiss had somehow offended him, or transformed what he might have considered a moment of connection into something purely physical. It didn't affect me, because that's exactly how I'd seen it from the beginning. He positioned himself and moved closer. There was an awkward attempt at intimacy, but the angle was off, and it didn't work. It wasn't painful, just odd. I suppose I should have realized something from that, but in that moment, all I sought was to feel connected. Adjusting my posture, I tilted my hips and raised a leg to facilitate a better connection. He grasped the leg I elevated and then found his way. Once he did, the physical motions began, back and forth, our gazes locked on each other through the experience. It was an intimate encounter, hollow yet filled with the rush of excitement and thrill, probably more so because of the forbidden aspect of it. Both of us understood this, the allure of the forbidden. Then, my attention drifted, and I realized we were not alone. 4 others were observing us. Surprisingly, this realization, more than anything else, intensified the moment. Instinctively, I encouraged him to continue with more vigor. My vocal reactions weren't from the quality of the experience, but from a past of embracing my desires freely before I met Dave. The idea of being with someone I wasn't committed to, under the eyes of others, was strangely exhilarating. As the onlookers moved closer, the atmosphere charged with an intensifying storm outside. Suddenly, they were all around us, participating in ways that shocked me. The scene escalated with each one taking their turn, driven by an adrenaline-fueled desire, unlike anything I had experienced before. It was a whirlwind of sensations, each moment more surprising and intense than the last, leaving me in a state of disbelief at the rawness of the encounter. In the aftermath, the realization of what had transpired left me in a haze, reflecting on the boundaries crossed and the sheer intensity of the experience. As he did it more, he began to gently explore further, an area I'd rarely ventured into with Dave. It wasn't something we focused on, yet in that moment, under his spell, I found myself indifferent to his explorations. As he continued, a sudden and intense wave of pleasure overtook me, making me forget my reservations entirely. Just when I felt I was about to reach the peak of pleasure, he abruptly stopped, leaving me yearning for more. Another person took over, and at that point, I was too caught up in my desire for release to care about who it was. This person was more forceful, but the intensity didn't bring me the pleasure I sought. It was more pain than pleasure. An uncomfortable moment followed with someone else, but it ended quickly, and for that, I was grateful. Then, a change in dynamics as another took over, guiding me with a gentleness that allowed me some control, or so I thought. The sensation of being filled completely, the rhythmic movement between the two, it was overwhelming, driving me towards ecstasy. Amidst this, a crude comment cut through the haze of pleasure, briefly pulling me back to reality. The encounter wound down as abruptly as it had escalated, leaving me to reflect on the whirlwind of experiences. As the storm outside cleared, so too did the room begin to empty, leaving me with a mix of emotion and a moment of clarity about the extent of what had transpired. The final moments were a blur of confusion, regret, and a stark realization of my actions, leaving me to ponder the consequences in solitude. The next moment was a blur, as I felt a fleeting warmth that left as quickly as it came. The person beneath me hurriedly stood up, muttering about needing to leave. His words were directed at someone else in the room, Steve, completely ignoring me. It dawned on me then, a harsh realization that in their eyes, I was merely an object for their temporary pleasure. There I was, having let down my guard, not even considering the risks, with people whose names I didn't even know. The magnitude of my actions hit me hard, awakening me to the potential dangers I had carelessly exposed myself to. As this realization sank in, it felt as if I had been physically struck. The thought of Dave discovering this filled me with dread. My situation worsened when Steve, disregarding my attempt to leave, insisted I stay for one more encounter. Despite my protests that this was not who I am, he laughed off my resistance, pressing on with his advances and exploiting my vulnerability. He promised it would be quick and that he would ensure I got home safely. Despite my inner turmoil, I found myself acquiescing, overwhelmed by a mix of resignation and a desperate need for this to end. The thought of Dave and the hurt this would cause him lingered in my mind, bringing tears I couldn't hold back. This experience was a stark wake-up call, shattering my previous complaints about the dullness of my life and my identity struggles. It made me realize the true value of my roles, as Dave's partner and as a mother to our children. These were not mere labels but profound acknowledgments of my identity, and the love and respect I had earned in these relationships. Dave had chosen me, from all the people he had met, to build a life with, to raise a family with, to grow old with. This realization highlighted the immense honor and responsibility I carried, an honor I had carelessly dishonored. My children, Kyle and Wendy, were not just part of me, they were manifestations of my love, my care, and my pride. This moment of recklessness illuminated the true importance of these roles, the essence of my being beyond any momentary lapse. Reflecting on my lack of a traditional career path, compared to my friends, brought mixed feelings. I had tried going back to education but found it wasn't for me. Yet, I realized that didn't diminish my worth. Many around me seemed to cling to the idea that career and academic achievements were crucial for fulfillment. I, on the other hand, felt a different kind of completeness. My husband's unwavering support and joy upon seeing me were all the affirmation I needed. His dedication reassured me that I had everything I desired right at home. My role might not have been in a corporate ladder, but managing our home and finances was no small feat. I had underestimated its value, but no more. My friends, though I thought them wiser, often highlighted what they saw as my life's limitations. Ironically, these were the same friends who envied my stable and loving relationship. Their endless nights out searching for something similar seemed futile to me. I had found my partner long ago. In an unexpected turn, my introspection was interrupted by Steve, a reminder of the complexity of human relationships. Shortly after, we found ourselves in the midst of chaos, my vehicle wrecked. Approached by a news crew, I avoided the spotlight, fearing the repercussions of public exposure. My husband, astute as he is, would surely question the circumstances. Steve, on the other hand, embraced the moment with the media, labeled a hero. As we were escorted to the hospital, the narrative painted was one of heroism and vulnerability. Steve was celebrated, while I was cast as the one rescued, a simple twist of fate intertwining our lives in the public eye. I'd spent the whole day trying to figure out how to navigate through a tricky situation, careful not to tip my hand too early. When Dave walked in, burdened with our sleeping children, I couldn't help but marvel at the scene. He managed to close the door with a kick and made his way upstairs. Watching him, I couldn't shake off the feeling of how much I'd underestimated him. Dave was the epitome of what you'd call a good catch. Tall, with a youthful charm, he had a job that provided well enough so I didn't have to work. He was generous, truthful, and his love for me was evident, rivaled only perhaps by his affection for our children and, admittedly, his car. Lately, I'd been feeling a bit lost, perhaps yearning for the excitement of my past life amidst the routine of being a parent and running errands. The recent upheaval had thrown me back into memories of my more reckless days, days I wasn't proud of. Back then, it seemed all too easy to find temporary company, yet those fleeting encounters left me feeling used and empty. The worst part wasn't the shallow interactions but the profound loneliness that followed, a reminder that genuine care and affection were rare commodities. Dave had changed all that. From the moment we met, I felt enveloped in his genuine love and care, something that transcended the physical connection we shared. Our intimacy was something beyond mere physicality. It was deep, fulfilling, and magical. Yet, there were moments I craved something more raw, a contrast to our usual tenderness. But after witnessing the tenderness he showed our children, my desires took a backseat to the deeper connection we shared. It was hard not to want to deepen our family bond even further. As I reached out to him, hoping to convey my feelings, I noticed a shift in his demeanor. He moved away, citing the need to wash his car. I played along, teasing about the state of his Jeep, but he clarified with a smirk that it wasn't the Jeep he was concerned about. He appreciated its rugged charm, something he amusingly referred to as Jeep cred. His response, light and teasing, made me realize that regardless of the complexities of my emotions or our relationship, the foundation we built together was unshakable. I was determined to communicate better, to bridge any distance between us, understanding that what we had was worth more than any fleeting thrill. "Didn't you wash the car just before you left on your trip?" I asked. "And you only drove it a few miles to our friend's place. It didn't rain, and I'm pretty sure you didn't drive through any puddles or dirt, right?" "Dust," he cut me off. "It's probably just covered in dust." "All right, dust, I can accept that," I conceded. I knew I had to steer this conversation carefully. "But it feels like you're avoiding me. Why is that?" We were standing in the kitchen, him nearly stepping into the garage when he paused and turned to face me. "Look, you were away for 2 days. Usually, after being apart even for a night, we're so happy to see each other. Yesterday, I understood. We were both on edge, and you were upset at the thought of something happening to me. But now, the kids are in bed, I'm here wanting to spend time with you. I'm feeling neglected here while you're obsessing over some dust on the car." "Dave, just so you know, dust is everywhere, even in our garage," I pointed out. "So, you're a dust expert now," he retorted, trying to gauge if I was hiding something. I'd prepared all day for this, keeping my expression unreadable before giving him a small smile. "I love you, Dave," I said softly. "But sometimes," I took his hand, leading him upstairs to our room, gesturing towards the nightstand on my side. "What's this about?" he asked, puzzled. I picked up a well-worn novel from the nightstand, a book he supposedly bought me on a recent trip. "You got me this book when we were out shopping," I said vaguely. He looked confused, not recalling the book, but to him, all romance novels were probably indistinguishable. "Just read the back cover." He tried to understand how the book was relevant. "I fell asleep reading it last night. It's about a woman searching for her long-lost love, a man named Steve." He seemed skeptical, but his expression softened. This time, he didn't resist when I drew him closer to the bed. I saw him thinking, curious about his thoughts. I casually stroked his chest, expecting him to reciprocate, but the anticipated reaction wasn't there. If he wanted to keep his distance, that was his choice. I sat up, removed my t-shirt, and let it fall to the floor. "Let's see if he can resist now," I mused to myself. Dave gently caressed my chest, but his heart wasn't in it. That's when it hit me, I was facing a dilemma. Ever since I turned 22, and even before my first relationship at 19, I hadn't encountered someone who was indifferent to my appeal. Yet, the very person who once adored me seemed to have changed. I was taken aback. Attempting to ignite a spark, I found no response from him. I wondered if he understood my deep desire to be close to him at that moment. On one hand, as a vibrant woman in her prime, I believed that a physical connection was essential for maintaining my well-being. On top of that, I was carrying the weight of a terrible mistake, seeking to alleviate some of the guilt through this intimacy. It felt as though there was a rift between Dave and me, and being together would reassure me that we were still alright. But the issue ran deeper. I had been treated unfairly by others, used without any consideration for my feelings. Dave had always been different, ensuring our moments were mutual. Beyond that, I was struggling with the aftermath of feeling degraded, longing for genuine affection and care. And then there was Steve's unkind remark, which had deeply hurt me. "I suppose I'm just not feeling it," Dave remarked. He stood up and exited the room, not even glancing my way. It made me wonder, was it really a thing for guys to not be in the mood? The pattern continued into Sunday, mirroring the rest of the weekend. Dave left in his car, leaving behind his messy Jeep for me, not that I had any plans to go anywhere. When he returned, he was visibly tired. He explained that he had gone for a run in the park and pushed himself too hard because he was planning to run a marathon in the fall. This was news to me, even though he ran 3 or 4 times a week. Afterward, he went straight to bed for a nap, too worn out for anything else. Even when I offered to take the lead, he declined. Later, he spent time playing video games with the kids and stretching. Then, he decided to wash his car again. It became clear to me that it wasn't just intimacy he was avoiding, it was me. Dave was always a devoted father, yet his behavior that weekend was over the top. It seemed like he couldn't bear to let the kids out of his sight, possibly still upset with me for not checking on them during the storm. Sunday night passed uneventfully, and by Monday morning, I was restless. Dave usually left for work after the kids were gone, and often, we'd seize those moments for ourselves. Remembering the times we were together before the day even started, I felt a pang of loss. So, when the bus left that morning, I drove straight to Dave's office. I greeted the security guards and headed up. Upon reaching Dave's office, an odd feeling washed over me. I walked in to find him embracing another woman. "Take your hands off my husband," I yelled. They both turned in shock. Dave was hugging Miriam, his longtime secretary, whom I had always considered a friend. I had never seen her as Dave's type. Dave simply shook his head and checked his watch, as if dismissing my upset. "I've got a meeting," he stated coldly. "Miriam, would you mind handling this?" She nodded, smiling. "We'll talk at home," he said to me, his tone sharp, then left the room. Miriam faced me then, her expression one of disappointment. "You just had to ruin my moment of happiness, didn't you?" she accused. "What on earth am I supposed to think?" I exclaimed. "I come in here and find you too close for comfort with my husband." She interrupted me with a gesture, her finger raised, commanding my full attention. She regarded me with a discerning look, then sighed deeply. "I can't help you," she stated simply. "Help? I wasn't looking for help, just for you to keep a respectful distance from my partner and..." Again, she silenced me with a gesture. "How long have I worked alongside Dave?" she queried. 12 years, I believe," I replied. "Exactly," she confirmed. "From the moment he started seeing you, I supported it. I believed you'd be a positive influence on him. I celebrated your wedding, was there for the birth of your children, and visited your home more times than I can count. I've shown Dave affection in your presence countless times. Yet, this instance has upset you." I began to understand my grave error. "Take a look around, Lisa," she continued. "Notice the decorations, the arrangements. It's a significant time for me. They threw a farewell party for me last Friday while Dave was away. I recently got engaged and discovered I'm expecting. And no, Dave isn't involved. My fiancé, whom you've met, serves in the military. This is his hometown, though he's based in California. I'm moving there to be with him through the pregnancy and to marry before our child is born. What you walked in on was a harmless goodbye embrace from one of my closest friends. And remember, you've seen us embrace before, even when I was just in swimwear." She regarded me with a piercing gaze. "You're being unfaithful, aren't you?" she deduced, her tone filled with disappointment. "It's the only explanation for your sudden and intense jealousy. Those who are unfaithful often suspect others of the same, leading to irrational behavior. And if you are, you're making a huge mistake. Dave will figure it out eventually, and you'll lose him. You'll be forced to watch him build a life with someone else, filled with regret, but it'll be a consequence of your own actions." She then sat at her desk, dismissing me, and began to work as if I was no longer there. That morning, I was in a foul mood when the phone rang. A mix of anger, frustration, and fear consumed me. The ring nearly made me jump out of my skin. "Has everything settled down in your so-called paradise?" she inquired casually. "I assume by now you've tried to make amends in your own way." "I wish," I responded. "Honestly, I wish the situation was reversed." "So, how did you come to know about my dilemma?" "I don't," she chuckled. "I'm not clear on the details, but I know there's some tension brewing." "How did you come to know about it?" I queried. "Your husband rang me up," she explained. "He was curious about your past. Reminds me a bit of Elaine's story." Elaine was a friend who had a breakup after her partner discovered her lively social life during her university years. "Oh no," I murmured, a wave of anxiety washing over me. "Ease up, Lisa. Your situation is more stable than Elaine's. For starters, you and he have been married for a decade. Secondly, his affection for you is undeniable. He won't let you go easily. And thirdly, you both share 2 wonderful children. It's best to be upfront with him. In hindsight, this may partly be my and Sarah's doing." "How so?" I inquired. Remember the party about 8 months back? She probed. You overdid it with the drinks, I recalled. Have you ever seen me lose control like that before? She pressed. I paused, realizing I hadn't. Paula was usually the one looking after us. What are you getting at, Paula? I pressed. I wasn't actually inebriated, she confessed. Dave just seemed too perfect. I was curious to see if he had any flaws. I don't follow, I responded, frustration mounting. Yes, you do, she persisted. You did something similar back in college. You charmed a few of your professors at those mixers by pretending to be tipsy, and they were married. It's practically why you managed to stay in college as long as you did. So, you're saying you, my closest friend, made a move on my husband. I raised my voice over the phone. Please, just hear me out, Lisa, she urged. I acted completely out of it, made some bold moves to show I was interested. But he didn't react. He even tried to get coffee to help me sober up. Once he thought I was less affected, we ended up talking about you, of all things. He treated you as if you were this perfect being, sent from above to enrich his life, Lisa. It irked me to no end. There I was, seeming like I had lost all self-respect, yet all he could talk about was his virtuous wife. So, I may have let slip that you weren't always the saint he thought you were. And that might have been the spark that lit the fuse, because that's what he wanted to discuss when he called. It seems like it's been gnawing at him for a while, and he just reached his breaking point over it. It does seem plausible, I acknowledged. Paula, do you think you could, as my friend, possibly refrain from meddling in my marriage? I ended the call, seething with frustration. As I tidied up the house that afternoon, I pondered deeply on how to mend the growing gap between Dave and me. At that moment, I was still in denial about the root cause of our issues, but I believed there was a way to repair our relationship. When he arrived home that evening, I greeted him with open arms. I opted for a casual look, wearing a long t-shirt with shorts underneath, knowing it appealed to him. Every man has his preferences, and my husband wasn't fond of lingerie. He found it too forced, almost as if saying, look at this impractical, pricey garment I'm wearing to entice you. Over time, I realized Dave didn't care for such things. Yet, there were moments when the simplicity of me in a t-shirt, especially after working up a sweat in the yard, drove him wild. I recall one instance when he led me to the garage, his eyes ablaze with desire. Initially, I thought he was upset because I had erred in some way. He guided me to his cherished car, leaning me over the hood. Then, with passion, he caressed me through my t-shirt, hastily removing my bra and discarding it. At that moment, I understood his intentions, and I was more than willing. I've always appreciated how considerate Dave is as a partner. He's the most gentle person I've ever known, especially in intimate moments. His approach always made me feel cherished, which helped me move past my previous reputation without feeling I was compromising myself. But this time, something unleashed his primal side. He swiftly removed my shorts and underwear, exposing me in the seclusion of our garage, vulnerable to any onlooker who might wander into the yard. My body responded with an intense arousal, a testament to our undeniable connection. Dave acted with a raw, instinctual passion, reminiscent of the exhilarating rush often associated with forbidden desires. Our encounter was fueled by sheer, unbridled desire, devoid of any pretense or restraint. It was intense and fervent, a testament to our deep connection and mutual longing. Feeling a rush of exhilaration afterwards, it was an instinctive, empowering sensation that left me with a warmth spreading inside. Dave, on the other hand, appeared regretful and kept apologizing, as if he believed he had crossed a line. However, all he really did was intensify the attraction I always felt towards him. This experience shifted my perception of Dave. I've always adored him, yet now there was a hint of apprehension. Not because I feared harm, but because he revealed a depth of passion within me I hadn't known existed. It was a craving for that intense, untamed desire that was new to me. Before, my adventures were just that, adventures. But this was different. That moment in the garage ignited a longing for that intense connection again. I mulled over it repeatedly, unable to decipher the change. When I tried discussing it with Dave, he seemed too shy to delve into it. My comment, OP wished the relationship was not like this, yet she started all of this. What do you think will happen in the final ending? I am working on it as you watch this, and I will see you there.